So in this video, we'll be doing part 5 of the multiple choice questions regarding DNA and RNA. So remember, in these videos, I don't just give you the answer, I explain them in detail, but I do give you an option to just try it on your own first before I explain it. So don't worry, I will reveal this before I explain it. So I made part 1 to 4 already before, and basically I do questions, as you can see, here's part 4, where I explain them, where stuff in diagrams and stuff is hidden below this, so that you guys understand it. I don't want you guys to just memorize the answer. So before doing these questions, make sure to also watch my video on DNA, my videos on DNA and RNA, where I explain them in detail and how they work. Because if you watch those, there's nothing more you need to know. I cover in extreme detail. I don't just do the basics. So let's dive into this question. So first, read the question. So nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. What parts of nucleotides are joined together in both DNA and RNA to make these polymers? So having read the question, most people now jump into looking at the options. This is not what I recommend. I recommend that you draw out what's happening in this question to know exactly what they're asking for and try and give an answer yourself first before even looking at the options. But for this sake, I'll just show you so you can try it by yourself first, but I recommend drawing it out first. So now let me explain how we should find the answer to this question. So here is a diagram that I wanted to show. This is DNA, and if you fold open DNA, you can see the structure: a sugar, phosphate, a base. All right. Now they're saying nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. So remember, this structure right here, if you watch my videos, you'll know is a nucleotide. It's a subunit of DNA. Nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. If you don't know what polymer is, a polymer pretty much means chain. It's a chain, a whole bunch of them linked together. That's what a polymer is. Poly meaning many. So polymer is a chain of nucleotides. You can just substitute this with chain. So nucleic acids are a chain of nucleotides. So we know this is one nucleotide. So they're saying if you put a bunch of them together, as you can see in this diagram, what you'll get is a nucleic acid. So I hope you understand that statement. What parts of nucleotides are joined together in both DNA and RNA to make these polymers? So they're basically asking, how are these joined together? These nucleotides that are linked together form a chain or a polymer. How are they exactly joined together in DNA and RNA? Now we know this DNA and RNA are the same, except that DNA is double-stranded, so it's got one strand here and then one strand here, whereas RNA only has one strand. So really, it doesn't matter that they're just saying both DNA and RNA, because regardless, we only care about the single strand. It will be the same for DNA and RNA. We're not caring about how these two strands are joined together in the middle. That's not what they're asking for. So that's why it doesn't matter that they're saying both DNA and RNA. We can just use DNA. So let's go down to explaining this now. So here we have one. So I'm zooming into this image right here. So this is a nucleotide. Here I show you a nucleotide. So I'm just going to delete this image. And we can see they're lined up. So this is what I'm going to show you now. So here we got a nucleotide. Let's put one above and see how it's going to link. But before that, I'm going to show you something, just so it's clear. So this structure right here is a nucleotide. Make sure you know that. Okay, nucleotide. And for the bonding, so now coming to the actual question, how do we link these two together? For the bonding process, we care only about, for the bonding process to link them in a chain, we only care about the backbone section of a nucleotide. What does that mean? We only care about this part of the entire nucleotide. Okay, this is called the backbone. So we do not care about the base. The base is only going to be useful in DNA when you link two strands together, left and right. The backbone is the essential part for linking them in a chain to form a polymer, linking one by one on top of each other, okay? So just remember, we only care about the backbone. Now, what's an easy way to remember how we link these together on top of each other? Well, I have a thing here that you might find useful. How can we remember how to link them? So each backbone component needs to make at least 2 bonds. So what I mean by backbone component is this is one component, pentose sugar. This is another, the phosphate group. So each component of the backbone needs to make 2 bonds. Right now we can see that the pentose component already has 2 bonds, one to the phosphate and one to the base. Okay, so we know to complete this bonding, the phosphate needs to make a bond. Okay, because right now it only has 1, because we said at least 2 bonds. Let's bring this up here. That's a good way to remember it. So what is going to need to happen is this phosphate is going to need to connect. Okay, we know, because now it has 2 bonds, but where does it connect to? So it does not connect to the phosphate. It connects straight to the pentose sugar. Okay? Yeah, so it connects straight to the pentose sugar. Now this thing is fulfilled. Each backbone component has 2 bonds. You don't even need to say at least. It just needs to be, the reason why I said at least 2 bonds is because pentose now makes 3 bonds. So just remember, they need to make at least 2 bonds, because if a scenario like this were to happen, if say you decided to you wanted to bind it from the pentose to pentose, then this wouldn't be fulfilled. Then each backbone component would not have at least 2 bonds, because now the phosphate only has 1 bond. And now the pentose has 3. So no, this would not be correct. So it needs to be from the phosphate to the pentose sugar for that how to remember to be fulfilled. Now, just so you know what kind of bond is made between them, it is a covalent bond. Okay, so these bonds that connect the chain of nucleotides together to form a polymer is called covalent bonds. Okay, covalent bonds, they're quite strong bonds. Now let's emphasize this just one more time. So say we had now another one. How would this work? Using the same idea, we will now take, using the backbone, we will know the backbone needs to make at least 2 bonds each. Right now the pentose has 2 bonds, phosphate does not. Now the phosphate has 2 groups, 2 bonds. So now it's fulfilled. That's the only way in which it links, okay? Now you're starting to form a chain. You're starting to form a nucleic acid, as the question stated. So let's look at the options now. So what parts of nucleotides are joined together in RNA and DNA to make these polymers? So let's look at A. Large nitrogenous bases with small nitrogenous bases. So they're saying nitrogenous base, by the way, is just another way of saying base. This is the base. They're saying these are joined with small ones. Remember, to make this chain, to make this chain of nucleotides bond, these are not even involved. Okay, they do not bond to the top one. They're bonded to the nucleotide in which it is a part of. Okay, so definitely not A. Nitrogenous bases with hexose sugars. So they're saying this bonds with this to link them together. That's not true. This bonds with this to keep one nucleotide together, not more of them. Okay, so they're caring only about this bond, the one that connects one nucleotide to the next. So definitely it's not B. Nitrogenous bases with phosphates. So they're saying now the bases with the phosphate groups. In no scenario does the base ever bind with the phosphate group. That never happens. So pentose sugars with phosphates. So now we get to it. So we have the pentose sugar bonding with the phosphate. So pentose sugar of one nucleotide bonds to the phosphate of the next one. And then the pentose of that one will bind to the phosphate of the next one. And this way, they're all linked up together. So the answer is definitely D. So C, by process, so we already knew the answer just by drawing the diagram, because we knew it's the phosphate bounded to the sugar and then the phosphate bounded to the sugar to link them together. But now that we have our answer in our head, we can compare it with their options, and yes, it's correct. But also make sure to eliminate the wrong ones, because sometimes there is small tricks and things like that, and then you make a mistake even though you thought you were right. So in this case, we did eliminate C, B, and A and got the answer D. I hope this how to remember makes it a bit easier. Only consider the backbone, like I said, in linking them above each other. Yeah, and I'll make a part 6 again and try and bring some more different questions in now.